Welcome back to Cheche. Today's conversation explores the future of civil society in Kenya. Actually, we've dwelt a lot more on the present. This follows attempts last week to shut down two organizations well known for their governance work and for challenging the establishment. Our guests are on opposing sides of that conversation. John Jamue, a human rights lawyer and the chairman of the International Commission of Jurists, and from the government perspective, spokesman Eric Kiraibe. And before the break, sir, you were talking about why the PBO Act has not been brought into effect. And John, you wanted to respond.
I wanted to say this, that under the Constitution, Article 116, when a law is passed in Parliament and it is given presidential assent, then the government is given 7 days to gazette that law. And if it does not gazette that law, within 14 days, that law automatically is deemed to have come into operation. So the PBO Act, when it was assented to on 12th January 2013, and the government did not bring it into operation within the 14 days, under our Constitution, is deemed to have come into operation. And like we've already pointed out, that for the last 4 years, we have entered into these shenanigans of trying to amend it before it is brought into operation and so on and so forth. Once Parliament passes a law, the executive's role is to sign that law, or in some instances to take it back to Parliament when they have a problem. And the President has done that several times. What the executive doesn't have a right to do is to take a law and sit on it for 5 years, as they have done with the NGO, with the PBO bill Act. Mr. Kiraibe has talked about the government several times, but I would like to remind him that the government does not act above the law. Everyone, from the president on to the MCA, on to the chief, all of us here are bound by the law, and especially this cardinal law of our land. So if the government has issues with any law, it is within its prerogative to take it back to Parliament and argue its case. But it must follow the Constitution. It cannot just say, we know best, and we will tell you what is best. Because we've moved from those days of one-party rule. We are all governed by the Constitution, and that's what must happen with regard to the PBO Act. With regard to the point that he said that as long as it has not been operationalized, then the NGO Coordination Act is the one that continues to exist. I beg to disagree. Because as I said, under the Constitution, that law is a law in our statute books, and that law does away with the NGO Coordination Board and the Executive Director. Therefore, the law in force right now should be the PBO Act. We have been to court, like I said, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and gotten orders from the court. So the government is in contempt of those orders. The government is in contempt of the Constitution, and therefore acting illegally.
So what should we do? It looks like we are powerless. No, what should we do?
We're not powerless. Because we have been, actually the sector, let me tell you something, the sector has been very patient. We have engaged for a long time with the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution. We engaged with the late Honorable Kaiseri in the Interior. We are engaging with the current Acting Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Matiang'i, to try and break this logjam. But at the same time, we still reserve the right to go back to court and say that the government has failed to do what the court ordered it to do.
There's something else that you're doing, isn't there? You're drafting a human rights defenders policy, a civil society, which one hopes that the government would take up. Charles, you wanted to say something, but I would like to engage you panelists, because earlier in the show I asked whether the targeting of 2 organizations meant that the entire sector, civil society, was under threat. Now, we all know that the current president and his deputy, when first elected in 2013, did so while facing charges at the International Criminal Court. And so if did the legal situation of the president and his deputy mean that the entire government was under threat from civil society? Because watching Kenyan politics over the last 6 or 7 years, it would seem that that's what's playing out.
There's a story about it's actually been going viral the last few days on social media. When they came for Woodwork, I said I'm not Woodwork. When they came for Eric, I said I'm not Eric. When they came for Mutegi, I said I'm not Mutegi. When they came for Njonjo, I said I'm not Njonjo. Now when they've come for me, there's nobody to defend me.
And this
it
goes
could
back
start
to
with
the time of the World Wars.
Yes. It could start with the two organizations. But again, what does it portend? Remember, there's the issue of precedence. If the two organizations are clamped down on and action is taken by an illegal authority and they are shut down, what will happen to the other 9,998 others? Are they going to undergo the same fate? That is the question we must ask. But even as we do that, I wanted to ask Njonjo, civil societies have never been known to be that patient. They always somehow get their way. If they go to the court and they don't get it, the next thing you will see them on the streets. How is it that they've been so patient with this act not being implemented 5 years down the line? Are they hiding something?
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
We have been patient because we've been working through the structures established by the law. But I want to correct you. We've been on the streets. In December 2013, or November 2013 thereabouts, when the former cabinet secretary attempted to amend the PBO Act to bring this 15% cap, civil society was out in the streets. So we've engaged on various forums, in the streets, in the courts, in boardrooms with cabinet secretaries. And the patience that we have is that we are trying, unlike Fazul, to do things in accordance with the law.
This is what our viewers are saying. Jake, Kiraive is hypocritical, saying no NGO should run without oversight. The reason why they are fighting civil societies is to avoid oversight. This from Nginya. The cardinal principle of the NGO, CBO, PBO operation is maintaining a non-political stance. Why is politics in Kenya their mainstay? And you addressed this, but I think it might need to come out a bit more clearly. Various others, the government is on a hunting spree to ensure that all its detractors during elections are silenced by all means. This second term is going to be lethal. That's Josiah. And we get that sort of, this is what we're hearing from our viewers, that you're being disingenuous. Now there are viewers, Njonjo, you talked about this being a dark period, last week being dark, and there are others who said, well, you know, that's your business, let us, and this speaks to the divisions within Kenyan political society, that, you know, we're quite happy with the outcome, and we should carry on like that. But it does seem, Mr. Kiraive, that the perception of the government is of hypocrisy and of going against people who criticize it, of vindictiveness.
Well, that perception is unfortunate because the government is by nature, that is government, people like myself are political. We serve the government which Kenyans have elected, and we should continue doing it. The next thing I would want to say is that the silence of the NGO and the civil society is due to the fact that 2 out of 10,000 is 0.000%, you know, something which is not mathematically very significant. The fact of the matter is that if you are approached by government, and I'm not an hypocrite in this, or a government body which wants to investigate anything, the responsible thing is to submit to those investigations. The second thing is that if you are an organization supporting a certain political cause, it is allowed by the Constitution. Come out, support the political cause, or better still, join a political party, and then you'll be dealt with from that angle. Otherwise, on the part of the government, the civil society have a future in Kenya. They have played a huge role in democratization, in development, in the social welfare of the Kenyan citizens, and they are faithful partners to the government. Okay. And very steadfast.
I don't know what you mean by government. Government is composed of human beings, and those human beings make mistakes. I remember once I was told to go and make a statement in a Nakuru police station. When I went there, they told me they were arresting me. I said, you cannot arrest me by driving my car to Nakuru from Nairobi, then you arrest me, I leave my car there. If you want to arrest me, come to the office, arrest me. So individuals make government. People like you make mistakes. So a government is not anonymous. It is individuals who make mistakes, and they need to be corrected. So you cannot just say, government does, government does. Government is made of civil servants who make mistakes, like that civil servant who is called the cabinet secretary for devolution, or whatever, interior, who has refused to operate under an act of parliament illegally. It should be taken to court.
So look, we are winding up. And there is this is what our viewers are saying. Civil society actors who claim to be human rights defenders are just pretenders. They're mainly driven by their desire to get rich from the donations from their benefactors. Soon enough, they join the league of the high-class Kenyans in the leafy suburbs compared to the poor they pretend to defend. Kindly inform us if civil society in Kenya speak for us only during elections, but we don't hear them when we face other problems. It's unfortunate that a government spokesperson could respond like that openly. Having someone illegally in power and throwing stones anywhere and not arrested. Civil society is not infallible and it has to be regulated. In the past, we've seen some NGOs who turned out to be just a cover, but in reality were supporting terrorism activities. So as we wind up now, going forward, if there's a feeling that civil society is no longer a force for progress, which as everyone has agreed it has been in Kenya, how do we get out of this, place where certain organizations are good because they're digging boreholes, as you said, in Northeastern, but when they question governance processes and structures, then they are evil society. Panelists, and then I'll guess the final word.
Look, like somebody alluded to, oversight is very important. The government needs somebody to oversight. But this person who is oversighting the government also needs to be oversighted. Otherwise, they'll run amok. And for some reason, Mr. Kirai, they avoided talking about the issue of security for this country. If there's a perception that
which all of our viewers have talked about.
If there's a perception that civil societies are used to siphon in money to destabilize a legal government, there's every reason to have them oversighted. And so I do not understand why it would take forever to implement the PBO Act, because it's more like acting as an oversight for the civil societies, which is oversighting the government.
But surely, is that also an excuse to ensure that people are not operating, Mutegi?
If in our country, civil society or organizations decide not to be independent and decide that they are going to side with a political party, then they are no longer civil society. If they get money from people who are worldwide known to be interested in changing governments and have done in the past, then there is need to be concerned. Otherwise, during the one-party regime, they did a very good thing. Law Society of Kenya, I remember, having time attended seminars for ICJ, like the one he said, and going to fight for multipartyism. That is very important. But then, once they decide in the situation like this one to side with the political party, then.
Okay. Mr. Director, I'll give you the final word. John Joe, there's a lot going on about political affiliations. Earlier you talked about process. But is there something that civil society is doing wrong that means that when it champions process, it's seen as championing a political outcome?
Can I ask a question, since Kenya is a fairly religious society?
I will not respond to the question.
It's a rhetorical question.
Right.
Did Jesus Christ form a political party? Or did he run for office? He did not, but he spoke to very political issues of his day, which actually ended up costing him his life. Fortunately, he rose again.
But again, the analogy of Jesus is very tricky.
Let me finish. The point I'm making is this, that the issues we fight for, the empowerment of citizens, the standing up against autocratic power, and those who seek to exercise powers that they don't have under the Constitution and under the law, necessarily bring us into conflict with those who wield political power. And to some people, they think that we are being political. But the point I'm making by using Jesus Christ as an example is that we as Kenyans have fundamental rights under our Constitution, which we have a right and not permission to exercise. And as civil society, we organize, mobilize, and collectively address those issues. If those issues, if by standing up we then are seen to be quote-unquote political, then it's just too bad. Because if you look at the history, and this is my last word, so let me just finish. If you look at the history of this country, before independence, when we had the Kikuyu Central Association, when political parties were not allowed, those were civil society organizations. through the 60s, the 70s, in the dark days of one-party rule, civil society rose up and became the voice of the people. During all those times, they were accused of being political, and that will not stop, nor will it stop us from standing up and speaking on the issues and the values that we have bound ourselves to as Kenyans through this constitution.
When we talk about being
we're out of time. I need to give him the final word.
Let me wind up by saying that in this country we are independent now for well over half a century, and this is an independence Kenyans are protected. The civil society is a tool like any other. There are a lot of organizations.
Does it have a future in Kenya?
Which I will talk to that in a second. Which have done very well, partnering with all well wishers to develop Kenya. They will continue doing it. It is a tool. Others have sought to introduce terrorism. Others have sought to distort democracy and elections. And the government of the day in Kenya, whether it is today or in 10 years, will always have a responsibility to ensure that those who are working for the good of the Kenya, for the future, for democracy, are encouraged, they are protected, and those others who have clandestine intentions are flushed out. Not any specific NGO or civil society group, but all civil society group as a country.
Okay, so we end the conversation there, but I'm sure, Mutegi, and to our viewers, that the conversation will continue on other platforms. So we thank our guests. We had the government spokesperson, Eric Iraide, and we've also had the chairman of the International Commission of Jurists, human rights lawyer, Njonjo Moe. We thank you for your time and your insights this morning. Our thanks also to our panelists, Mutegi Njau and Charles Odiambo. My name is Udwa Kamimo. Thank you for watching and engaging with us here on Cheche. We'll see you next week.